So it is March 17th, 2022. I'm noticing my lip is a little bit chapped, dry. And I'm making, well, hit or miss soy milk cafe latte here. I gotta stir it. It changes, theoretically, who knows, it may change the chemistry, the biochemistry of it. I like to say bio in front of chemistry to sound funny. Uh, I'm a bio, I'm not gonna say. Change the biochemistry. And what's interesting is the funny thing. A long time ago, when there was when GHB, liquid ecstasy, was a new thing. It was like on television shows and things like that. Like those comedy like crime solving shows, like similar to like the Sean and Gus type of crime mystery or like Monk, something like that. But there was one where there's a guy who was working at a bar and they were serving GHB or something to everyone, and it's just like exaggerated, And it was, anyways. There have been cases and incidences where people have, done their laundry soaked in substances like that they thought would be, if it got into the right hands, that would be converted back into, it would be extracted from the clothing and then converted back into a consumable substance. And I'm just relating this the way I stir this coffee here. It reminded me of that time when I've seen that on TV where it's like, okay, yeah, stirring is a requirement to activate it. There is a difference. It does change it a bit. The where I would describe after drinking this, maybe 4 minutes later, if I'm only even halfway through or something like that, almost 3/4 of the way through. 4 minutes later, after that point, if I get up and start walking, it's as if I was hanging out with a group of people or within the vicinity of people smoking weed. That type of, like, it's the second hand contact type thing, but it's more than a contact here. There is some type of, because this doesn't happen when I drink, let's say, my lemonade, and there's nothing about this in any way, shape, or form. It doesn't smell anything like cannabis or anything like that, but I get the effect from after drinking it after a certain time period too. It's a bit time released. So I was thinking the other day that it didn't come to mind that there is something that resembles this whole thing, the way it would convert into this, the way I was describing with people who've supposedly soaked clothing in drugs and things like that and tried to, hand it over to the right hands so that they would be able to extract it back into, let's say, a street drug substance. Oops. Yeah, there have been freak incidences other than people who've had bad trips from actually consuming it on purpose or not knowingly. There have been freak incidences where, regarding, let's say, people putting on a piece of clothing that may have been soaked in liquid GHB or something. They end up having a bad trip or something, or, you know, It's not good. Oh, if it was liquid ecstasy or something, that can cause hyperthermia, and people could die from that. Yeah. So there, with in regarding to, let's say, some substances is not a leading cause to a direct death, but it can lead to death. Where, let's say, if it was a hallucinogen like LSD, supposedly there has been no direct link to it actually causing death directly, due to the substance itself. But obviously, if someone has an underlying medical condition like a heart condition or something, it could lead them to a panic state that can cause them to have a heart attack. They had leaned on the fact of them having the heart condition being the, let's say, the cause of that person's death, not the LSD that brought them to the panic state that caused their death. Or it was not the substance itself. But I mean, depending on the person, and let's say their ability to hold into their reality of knowing what is what. Like, if they're going to eat something, they know what a tomato is. They're able to say, and I know this is a tomato. I have to reintroduce this food. Otherwise, they're going to end up anorexic, possibly with an eating disorder. See, they assume that everyone who may either seek treatment for themselves, and then they think there are people who work in this field that I'm talking about, who tend to forget that there are people who actually, most of them actually desire to seek treatment, but they may not always know. But then there are some people who are aware that they need to seek treatment, like I had 20 years ago, because I didn't know when the symptoms would, eventually subside. I just wanted to know also at the time if, let's say, I had kidney failure or something, because I had trouble, passing a cardinal number 1 the morning after the incident. I had a full bladder, and it didn't right away. I was not able to get my brain to completely, let it control those muscles to be able to. It was like being constipated, but when it comes to going number 1 instead, I was able to get my brain to let my full bladder release finally, as I was sitting on the toilet for much longer. And it was like one of those things where it's like, oh my God, how am I going to, I didn't want to have to go right away to the hospital. So I managed to have been able to do that at that point, maybe about probably took 3 minutes or something like that. It just seemed longer. And it was almost impossible. This was quite scary. So then, yeah, it was questionable whether or not I had any kidney failure or kidney damage. But then I waited until the symptoms, I wanted to wait till, let's say, 72 hours had passed until I was more normal at that point, actually. And then I waited to see if I was okay for a month, and then boom, I had a flashback a month later. And then I was worried I was going to end up like one of my other family members that had an issue similar to, but theirs was not due to, let's say, a adverse reaction to substances or anything like that. Mine was. I knew there was. I had an issue for 7 years before that too. So, anyways, but there are people who work in that field who they have this implicit, like, that's not a professional way of, that I don't consider them professional or being professional by implicitly forgetting that it's not everyone, who goes for, if they are requesting to go for treatment or to see if they, need extra assistance, if it's possible at that point for some people, they don't know. But not everyone, it's like, I'm talking about the people who work in that territory. Surprisingly, they think that everyone who goes to see those people for a little assistance or something, or guidance, or more of a guarantee that they would get better, they want to know, may have a few diagnostic tests done or something. They, surprisingly, there are some people who work in that field who are not aware that there are some of the people that go to see them are the ones that wanted to make that request because they're concerned of, let's say, kidney failure or something like that. They assume the contrary to that almost all the time, but this is only some that I've came across. So, yeah, surprisingly. And I'm just surprised that they actually ended up having that job. And probably for a number of decades, for all that I know. Some of them. So. Yeah, and they also, they think that they're the only ones that would qualify for, being able to observe things like that. They assume that the person going, either seeking a little extra guidance or more of a, guarantee of a successful recovery, they want to know whether or not they'll, maybe their life expectancy, they may not know. And so that's why they went to go talk to them or something. So it's like they automatically don't want to believe that it was based off that person's internal observations, other than those